Teach a game a revolution. What we're talking about is wild mind training. What? Wild what? Wild mind training. Wild what? I'm talking wild mind training. Wild mind training. Wild mind training. You know what?
Welcome to Season 3 of the Teacher Gamer Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Resnichek, and I'm thrilled to be sharing upcoming interviews with some of the most dedicated adventurers, educators, and artists on the planet. A little over a year ago, I caught up with my neighbor, Michael Franti, at Soulshine, Bali, where he hosts travelers and retreats when he's not on tour with his band Spearhead or spending quality time with his family. I've had the privilege of going to Michael's birthday at Soulshine for years now and become great friends with his longtime songwriting partner and bassist, Carl Young, who moved in next door a few years ago. Shout out to Carl, Sivan, and Shervin, my favorite paddle players. In this chat with Michael, I'm branching out to include musicians as teacher gamers because I've always felt there's so much joy and play to be found in making and sharing music. In fact, the verb play is the main way we talk about expressing ourselves musically. We say that we play music together because there's not only call and response, there's this need to listen and be with the music, to be present with the other instruments and players, and then to play back with them what is needed. It is a delicate balance to hold your ego in check and yet not to shrink back either. Not only play what is needed, just the right amount of soul, beauty, and flourish. It's about riffing off of melodies, rhythms, and harmonies, and getting what you know that people will recognize and take some risks to venture into original territory. As role players responding to a story plot hook and a room of intriguing characters that the game master sets up with a meme reference and a blend of story tropes, jazz and R&B musicians at a jam session invite guests to join them playing standards to see if they can find some magic together. Role players at the game table playing their characters might respond by riffing off the memes or tropes with a few references to a novel, TV show, or anime, and twisting it into an original monologue improvised on the spot that changes the whole flavor of the encounter and the whole story. Another player can join in, and it turns into a duet, or even a chorus when other players join the conversation. Just like a song that is remembered for its incredible collaboration, story moments and world building at tabletop RPG sessions become famous community references for years to come. Just as it is with games, there's collaborative music and there's competitive music. There's the experience of playing for the fun, the shared win, the belonging and camaraderie, and then there's playing for points, for credit, and for standing above the rest. When it comes down to it, musical improvisation and role-playing are shaped by countless layers of ego, nuance, unspoken dynamics, and fleeting moments of brilliance, where the balance between individuality and collaboration creates something truly unforgettable. Of course, bad experiences happen, but beyond poor sportsmanship or selfish artistry, the reality is that everyone is rooting for each other to succeed, to bring down the house with the best possible performance. Competition has long been intertwined with jazz and R&B, from cutting contests to drum battles, shaping musicians and sharpening performers through the relentless trials of skill and showmanship. DJ battles and breaking are a kind of extension of this tradition. In RPGs, players face a similar dynamic, balancing creative collaboration with moments of friendly rivalry, where improvisation, quick thinking, and the ability to elevate a scene or encounter can make all the difference in shaping unforgettable storytelling experiences. With Michael Franti's career spanning decades from being a young man all the way up to being a community shaper, he shares his journey through play and finding his way in the music industry. With a focus on being playful, making bold choices, and building a sustainable community, Michael shares insights into his creative process, his childhood, and his continually evolving career. Above all, he shares his experience of honoring family, from the house he grew up in, to his biological family he met later in life, to his own children and wife Sara, who are awaiting their second child, to the Balinese families that work with him to bring Soulshine alive, to his massive fan base family that he visits around the world, touring annually. Time for some shout outs. Special shout out to Joe Klimke for filming this interview with Michael Franti. Big thanks to you, Joe. You can check out the video and other exclusive Teacher Gamer articles and media at the Zachary Resnichek Substack if you sign up as a supporting member. If you want to join my upcoming Teacher Gamer training sessions, if you have any questions or you want to set up a quick chat, please email me at zach@teachergamer.com. Special shout out to my dad, who a few weeks ago sent in our family message chain that his new favorite song was Michael Franti's The Sound of Sunshine, a song about finding joy and gratitude in life's simple pleasures, inspired by Michael's recovery from a near-fatal illness and the uplifting warmth of the sun. I texted back to my dad, "Well, I've got some very interesting news for you, Dad. My next podcast episode is my interview with," drumroll,
all right, so I'm here with Michael Franti, and this is Zach from Teacher Gamer, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. We're about the same age, so a lot of my questions I feel like come from me discovering who you are as an artist and as an activist. A father, a brother, a son, an artist, a poet, a musician, a film scorer, a mover, shaker, entrepreneur, collaborator, activist. These are kind of the things that I think about when I think of who you are. Anything you would add to that?
No, that's too many things already.
It's a lot. We're here in Bali, Indonesia, and I want to talk to you about games, about life skills, about being playful.
Yeah.
And just to get, just an open conversation, and any stories you want to share are always really interesting and important. Can you remember the first game you ever remember playing?
Probably hopscotch. My family, was 5 of us kids, and both my parents are teachers, so there wasn't a lot of like buying expensive toys or anything like that. It was usually just like chalk or like hammer and nails or, making stuff. My father was a wood carver growing up, so there would always be like wood things around that we could mess around with. But hopscotch was something that all the kids in the family would participate in. And I remember being really young in the street and drawing the chalk in the sidewalk and trying to figure out which foot goes where, and the bigger kids being able to seemingly do it with ease and me having to do it with great effort and left brain, right brain, left foot, right foot, and not really quite being able to get it. So that's my first game playing memory. And then sort of just imaginary games, I'm playing, building forts in the house and, getting under the bed and that became a whole world there that we would play, whatever thing was, in our imagination.
And so you had lots of siblings.
Yeah.
And so you guys got up to it, like a lot of playing together. And
yeah.
Where were you in that group by age?
Well, of the kids I was raised with, I'm 4th out of 5. But then there's also 4 other siblings that I have that I didn't meet until I was 22. So of those, I'm like 7th out of 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember what was your favorite game, or do you remember going back to certain things and liking to play it again?
You know, I love Lego, where it was a big thing in our house, and this was before Lego. Like you just got a box of Legos. There was no like instructions. There was no special pieces that put a face on a Star Wars character or something. They were just bricks, and you had to really be imaginative and just try different stuff to create what you wanted. And you know, it definitely didn't look like a car. Just look like a bunch of stuff, and then you stuck some wheels on it. You know, and it was like, oh, this is my, you know, whatever, my space car or whatever. So it was a different time. I'm 57, so things were not as I guess predictable, the outcome, you know, when you played with Lego.
How do you feel like, or could that have influenced you later in terms of putting things together as an artist? And you know, did you feel like I mean, now a lot of things are ready made, right?
Yeah.
You can do things by code, you can get all sorts of samplings, you can get all sorts of things, but back in those days, I mean, you had to put things together in a different way.
I think that play is a huge part of everything I do. I never go into any work of art or any creative endeavor that I'm doing thinking that I have this exact outcome that I'm going to find. Like, you know, throwing paint up against the wall basically and seeing what comes out. And that is how I approach recording. Building this hotel was a similar thing where, you know, we try something and we look at what is the outcome, how does it feel, how does it resonate with me when we put this color in this room or this sofa in this room. And if we didn't like it, then we'd change it, you know, and kind of be playful and trying to get things the way that feel right. And that's always what I'm trying to achieve when I think of a piece of art. Is like music is just the sound of feelings.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get to a place where, oh, this feels right to me. Not, is it going to be a hit on the radio? Not, are my fans going to like it? Not, well, maybe if my wife likes it or my kids like it, that's important to me. But I do think of it about what feels right to me.
And you have kids now, and
Yeah.
you had, I want to say, like, you have an older
I
child.
have like two generations
Two
of kids,
generations.
basically. Yeah, almost 3 generations. So my oldest is 36, Cappy. My middle child, who is non-binary, is 23 in a few weeks. And my youngest, Taj, is 5.
Yeah.
So there's some gaps in between there that, you know, it's always been that I've always had a young one, basically, you know. So, and that's something that has kept me, or kept play one of the centers of my life. And, you know, being a 57-year-old with a 5-year-old, it's like seeing the world through his eyes so much of the time. It keeps things fun.
For each one of those kids, can you think of a game that they taught you or that they brought to you, and you learned kind of new level of play or a new thing?
You know, Taj, the youngest, he's grown up here in Bali, and he speaks both Balinese as well as Bahasa, Indonesian, and English, and a little bit of Farsi because my wife is Persian. And he has this fascination with barong, which is, for those of you who have no idea what that is it's kind of like if you imagine like a Chinese dragon, but with just 2 people. And there's the barong and the rangda, and they're 2 different sides of the yin and yang. Yeah,
I don't know if he's there.
you got it. He's up there. Yeah, on your shirt. There are 2 different sides of yin and yang. And in Balinese culture, they don't believe that there's good and there's bad. There's just dark and there's light, and that you have to be able to balance both things in order to create harmony in life. And so the 2, barong and rangda, are constantly in battle. And so it's a game of costuming. It's a game of battling. It's a game of being ferocious. It's a game that's, you know, physical and playing in the barong costume. So Taj has had like 3 different barongs since he was little, and now he's up to this big, huge 2-person one that I can barely fit in, but I do. And it's really neat to see how Balinese culture, all the kids are really into the mythology, and they even make YouTube videos about it. There's a whole like culture of YouTube videos about barong, that kids just get in their barong costumes and they go out and they film stuff and they put it up on YouTube. And so I would say that is another, I guess it is a form of gaming, YouTubing, and you know, scrolling, which I have mixed feelings about, because I feel like it numbs you to things that are in the external, outside of the box world or off the screen world. If you scroll until you find something interesting, it's really hard to just go spend time with the creek or the tree or like watching a bird or playing with the frog or something like that. And at the same time, it is fascinating to see all of the different creativity that comes through, especially the channels that he's on, that he's surfing, and he's finding all the stuff that's made by other kids of his peer group, you know, 5 to 12-year-olds.
And what about with Cappy? Can you think of something that he brought you or that you remember?
Cappy, we played a lot of sports, like actual sports. So he was really into, we both grew up as 49ers fans. I grew up in the Bay Area, and so I was a 49ers football fan, Golden State Warriors fan. We used to go to the Warriors games when we buy the $15 ticket up in the very, very, you know, like triple R section. And by halftime, they'd be losing so bad we could almost, you know, make our way down to the lower level, sometimes even actually onto the front row court seats. And now I'm thinking like, man, those are like, you know, $10,000 seats today. But we loved playing sports, and you know, sometimes it would be, you know, football or baseball or just dodgeball in front of the driveway, or biking, skateboarding, rollerblading. He was really like super physical kid, and still is. And now he's at 36. He's a avid meditator, and he will go and do retreats, or they sit for 4 hours at a time. And it's remarkable to me that he's evolved into that person from the like super hyperactive, you know, quote unquote hyperactive child. And, you know, having raised 3 children who, at least during their childhood, identified as boys, there's a certain wildness that I think is important, a certain physicality that is really important. And I was always labeled as like a hyperactive kid in school, and I feel like a lot of my schooling was to try to like get me to sit still or, you know, focus on this worksheet or something. But my mind was so out beyond just the margins of the worksheet. And I find now as an artist and as an entrepreneur that I have to live out there, and thank God that didn't get totally, you know, taken from me, you know, through the education that I had.
Do you have any history of role-playing games, or did you ever play Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that?
I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons, but I did lots of theater, and our theater was a lot of it was like workshopping, doing improvisation and role play, and also as a kid growing up, we were constantly improving, telling stories and jokes and making each other laugh and trying to find ways to be entertaining to each other. And so I consider that part of my education of like playing characters and playing a role. And when I first started in music, I loved punk rock because it was, at least on one of the ethos, was to be yourself and to not be playing a role. And yet I found that as I started getting into performing on stage, that I was starting to play a role, and it was becoming less of who I am, not because the emotions I was expressing didn't come from me, but because I wasn't expressing all the other emotions that were in my rainbow of who I was. And so as I grew from the early stages of like angry punk rock and hip hop into evolving out beyond that, I realized that anger about the world and the system is just one real small sliver of who I am, and that in order to really be my authentic self, I have to talk about my sadness and my fears and my insecurity and my celebration and my joy and my love and my desire to party and be expressive in that way.
Cool. When you got, I don't know if you got signed to or they just took you on for a record, but with Alternative Tentacles, did you know East Bay Ray or Jill Biafra? How did that relationship come about?
I had met Biafra through performing at the Gilman Street Project in San Francisco, which is legendary punk rock, independent place. It's basically just a warehouse, and they've got a little PA in there, and people from the Berkeley punk rock community would all hang out there. And when I started the Beatnigs, we weren't part of that scene at all. We were just doing our own thing. In fact, we were more in the scene of like the San Francisco nightclubs in the 80s that were, after hour dance places and real raves, not like I'm going to a designated place where there's security and a cover charge and it stays the same place, but an actual rave where it's illegal and you're just doing it until they get shut down. We're more part of that culture. But some people saw us performing with all this metal and banging and sparks and grinders, and I was playing bass and it was super aggressive, and they said, come play at Gilman Street. And so we did, and we started playing there, and Biafra saw us perform one time, and he didn't offer us a record deal, but he said, if you guys ever do make a record, then consider putting it out to Alternative Tentacles. And so we did make a record, and there was this guy named Eric Cope, who was amazing artist, singer, writer, musician, producer, and now he's runs this hip hop magazine called Murder Dog. But back then he had this magazine called Wiring Department, I think, Wire Department, and it's like a zine, like fanzine kind of thing. And anyway, he was into our music, and so he and his wife moved into a van, and gave up their apartment so they could finance our recording.
Wow.
And it cost $700. We made this record for $700, and none of us had $700 at that time. And so we didn't have any more money to put it out, like actually press up records, and so we sent it to Biafra, and he was stoked on it, and he signed us to Alternative Tentacles.
That's cool. And then that moved, or from there, and you were with, I want to say, is it Ron or Ron?
Rano, yeah.
Yeah, and then you guys kind of started to go into Heroes.
Yeah, Disposable Heroes of Hiphoprisy, yeah. So I after the Beatnigs, I started another group. Beatnigs only made one record, did some songs for some compilations and stuff, and then I had a friend named Matt Callahan who was in this band called the Looters, and they had been signed to Island Records. And he came to the guitar store, Subway Guitars, that I was working in at the time, and he was like, Mike, have you been making any music lately? And I said, Yeah, you know, I've been working on a few things. I could, you know, play you this little demo I've recorded, and he was like, cool. And he goes, well, I'm working with Island Records now, and you know, why don't you just, you know, send some music to Island and see what they said? And I was like, fuck Island Records, man. They're like a major label. Fuck major labels. They're fucked up. You know, like the full on punk rock, do it yourself attitude. You know. And he said, well, why don't you write a letter of like everything that you would want, like if, in a perfect world, like what would it be, you know, like. And so I wrote this letter on like a yellow legal pad that I wrote all my lyrics on, and I said, here's my tape, you know, thanks for listening. I'll only sign with you if you give me X amount of dollars and full creative artistic control. I want to own the publishing. I want like all this stuff, like a list of demands, you know. So I sent this cassette with Matt. A few weeks later, I get this call from this guy, Human Maj, and he goes, hey, is this Michael Franti? I said, yeah. And he goes, hey, I just wanted to talk to you, but I work at Island Records, and you know, I heard your tape. And he goes, but before any of that, I just wanted to talk to you because I just thought your letter was so ballsy to ask for all these things without even like, most people just write and go, please listen to my music, will you please sign us? And so he goes, I just thought even if I didn't like the music, I might want to have you come work at Island Records. So we ended up getting signed to Island, and you know, they basically did everything we asked in the thing. And Chris Blackwell, who was the founder of Island, who, you know, brought Bob Marley to the world, and U2, and Grace Jones, and Tom Waits, and Roxy Music, so many incredible, you know, Cat Stevens, so many incredible records that he brought out. He played our song, Television, the Drug of the Nation, for U2. And they saw the video, and they loved the video, and they were just about to go out on their Zoo TV tour. And so they hired Mark Pellington, who was the director, to do all of their content for their video screens. And it was that tour was the first tour that ever had video screens on the stage, like massive video screens. And so they used that song as their walkout song for that show. And then they invited us to be the opening act. And so we went from playing, you know, places like Gilman Street to 150 or 200 people in punk rock clubs all around the country in a van, to opening up for U2. And you know, the first show was at RFK Stadium in Philadelphia, and you know, 50,000 people, you know.
Wow.
And
how did you handle that?
We had fun. It was just fun, you know, like I don't think I appreciated what a monumental jump it was, you know. And we weren't getting paid very much money, so it didn't feel like our lives had changed in any way financially. We were still driving around in a van. But it was really cool for me to learn from that band. And like, for example, I saw them perform the song One for the first time ever. And they played it on that tour, on that first show. That was their first time performing it out live. But even before that, I saw them working it out in soundcheck. And they still were not, you know.
It hadn't gone to the record, to the actual album yet.
The album had gone out.
Oh, okay.
But they were still working out how to play it live, you know, like.
Right.
And you know, so they'd go through half the song and then stop and talk about it and go through this, you know, more of the song. And you know, I got to see some of their creative process and how, you know, there they are, you know, playing, about to play for 50,000 people, and still, you know, don't quite know the full song, you know, and where the peaks and the moments of the song are. And so it was really neat. And then also to see the power of melody. You know, I was always just a lyricist and a poet when I first started, and it was like I just shout into the microphone basically. And then I saw Bono sing a melody and then hold the mic out to the audience, and the whole, you know, 50,000 people all singing the melody back. And I got that same feeling when I was a kid growing up and going to church, which I hated. I hated going to church, but I loved the moments when the songs happened, and everybody would sing together, and I would feel this resonance of like all these voices, just this roar of sound, and it felt really empowering and beautiful and emotional to me, and touched me in ways that I had never experienced as a child. You know, I'd be in tears just from just the sound of the songs. And I saw, you know, U2 do that, and it changed me because, you know, they were also a very vocal group about social issues and environmental issues, but they were doing it through a way that was different than the way I was doing it. And I realized that there was something more to music than just expressing, I guess, an opinion, but connecting with values, and so that people could share in the experience of reaffirming their values.
So then on from there, I mean, and I remember buying Home. I would say it was like in '94.
Yeah,
and I was at University of Oregon.
Yeah.
And so many songs in there really connected with me. But I remember one of the ones because I was hanging out with people who were DJs, and a crime to
be broke in America.
Yeah, and Crime to be Broke in America, and just the opening line.
Take the needle off the record and shove it in my arm. Yeah.
And so I have this question for you, which was, I feel like I was wondering how much of your work was autobiographic, and then at the same time, or was it bringing voice to the voiceless?
It's all autobiographical, but it's all metaphorical for what I see that's taking place in the world. But you know, when I grew up in like I said, both my parents were teachers, and we had 5 kids in the house. So it was a hand-me-down house. You know, we weren't kids that went skiing on the weekends or, you know, did anything like that. We just, but we didn't lack anything, you know. And when I moved to San Francisco, I moved into a neighborhood where there was a lot of lack, and there wasn't opportunities for people. And I saw how challenging it was. Another song on that album, Hole in the Bucket, you know, how homelessness was just all around me everywhere, you know, and how I would wake up in the morning and I'd open my door and there'd be someone literally sleeping on the doorstep. Literally every day there would be 1 or 2 or 3 people just right in front of our house, because we had these grates in the ground that had steam that came out of them. So in the wintertime, they would put their cardboard over these grates, and it would be like a heating thing underneath it. And so, you know, it gave me this different sense of how people in the world are living. And then as I started to travel around the world, I saw other levels of poverty and other ways of living. And, you know, living here in Bali, we live in a very, you know, there's great disparity between the haves and the haves not where we currently live. And yet, when you go to the other side of the island, into North or West Bali, you see poverty that is way more intense than what we have here. There's nothing, there's no, you know, here we have trees and people can make handicrafts and carve, and they're able to grow rice. On that side of the island, it's dry, and it's becoming drier each year because of climate change. There's not even trees for people to make stuff from. And so as I've seen different levels of wealth and of poverty, you know, it makes me feel a sense of empathy and a sense of wanting to try to help to improve lives and to bring awareness. And the thing that we're most proud of here at Soulshine, you know, beautiful rooms, beautiful, you know, grounds, and we employ 150 employees, you know, and we know that for each employee that we have, there's probably 6 or 8 people at home who are living from the salaries of those people that work here. for us, and that that goes into all of the decision making that we do here. For example, during the pandemic, we didn't lay anybody off. We decided that we were going to just spend everything that we'd saved over the years to keep our staff employed. And if it ran out, we would sell this place. Unfortunately, the pandemic ended before we had to do that. But it's we feel a deep responsibility to the people that work here.
Yeah.
And make this place special.
I remember also, again, this would be back in the 90s, I think, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about it. I remember reading an article and seeing the pictures, and I was imagining it in my head of you going into prisons
Yeah.
and actually spending time with inmates
Yeah.
and talking to them about and empower. Like, I would say you were doing activities that were empowerment through their voice.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We would perform. We've performed as a band in a lot of prisons, and then I've also gone in as just like a solo artist, or I play a few songs, and then work with young people in writing and expressing themselves and learning to speak up, and especially in youth detention facilities, young people's voices have been just trampled on, and whether it was from their home situations, ahead of getting locked up, but then definitely in getting locked up, they're told what to do and where to go and how to act. And again, like, they're boys who need to be wild and need to jump around and need to run and need to be aggressive and need to cry and need to share what's going on, and they can't. They don't have space to. And the culture of the facility is still like very authoritative, and so you have the administration, and then you got the guards, and then you've got the bigger, larger, physically stronger kids pushing down on the other kids, and so it's just a horrible setup for people to be able to express themselves. And so we would just go in and work with young people in writing and then delivering their poetry.
This is so long ago, but I remembered it and it always stuck with me. But I remember hearing the story where you would go in and have them kind of like hum a tone.
Yeah.
And that it would like create a resonance that
Yeah.
actually would get the guards like stepping back. Because it was like so intense. Is that kind of?
Yeah, what I would do is I've done these voice workshops over the years where we start with just having people make sound, and sometimes it's and I've done this in prisons and I've done it in yoga classes, and everywhere there's I read this thing that standing up in public and speaking is for the majority of Americans is a greater fear than death. And so to stand up and speak and say something out loud of whatever is your truth it's really hard to get there. But if you just stand up and you just make a sound, and then you start to give it a little melody, so you just go from to and then you start to sing the sound, and then you start to say the things. I am Michael, I'm from this place, this is something I love, this is something I hate, and you just start to sing, and it becomes easier through song and through sound. And it is really powerful to see the effect that it has not only on the person who's doing it, but everyone else in the room, including guards in a prison. And it's a great exercise for all of us to learn to speak our truth.
Tune in next week for the conclusion of my interview with Michael Franti on the Teacher Gamer podcast. If you would like to check out the video of the podcast in advance and become a founding member of our Teacher Gamer Substack, that would be incredible, and would love to have you supporting the Teacher Gamer Revolution. Congratulations to you, Michael, Sara, and Taj on the birth of Lua Bejat Franti. Welcome to the family, right where you belong. And thank you again to the Soulshine crew for welcoming me. And special shout out to Agung and family who have been working there at Soulshine for a few generations. And thanks to all of you for listening. If you are an educator or a gamer or a teacher gamer, or you just want to up your skills in project-based learning and social emotional learning, or delivering RPGs in education, in schools, in camps, or wherever on the planet you are, please get in touch, and would love to have you join our courses. You can check them out at teachergamer.com or biophiliceducation.com. Please reach out to me, Zach, at teachergamer.com, or check us out on Instagram or LinkedIn. Send me a message, and would love to see you join our class. We hope you've enjoyed the Teacher Gamer podcast, a Wild Mind training production. Text and production copyright 2021 to 2025 by Wild Mind Training for Teacher Gamer Revolution. All rights reserved.